Have you ever felt the weight of a diagnosis, the chilling uncertainty that settles in when a loved one's mind begins to slip away? Alzheimer's. The very word can feel like a punch to the gut. It's undeniably terrible, but what if I told you there's something even more devastating? Something that compounds the heartache and steals precious moments even faster? It's not the disease itself, but our ignorance of it. What if we could arm ourselves with the understanding, not just to cope, but to actually improve the quality of life for those we cherish? And what if we could find a little light in the darkness, a chuckle amidst the challenges? Join us as we navigate this difficult terrain with not with pity, but with knowledge and maybe, just maybe, a laugh or two. Welcome to Fading Memories, your source for all things dementia caregiving. I'm your host, Jen Fink, and I have had 3 generations of loved ones with dementia, and I'm here to share the knowledge I've gained with you. Thanks for joining us today, listeners. I'm Jen Fink, the host of Fading Memories podcast, and with me today is a past guest. He is the former governor of Wisconsin, Marty Schreiber, and he is also the author of My Two Elaines. He's back on the book tour because the book somewhat recently was re-released in paperback. So thanks for joining me, Marty.
Well, Jen, thank you for the opportunity to be with you once again. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for joining me. So tell us a little bit about you and your wife, Elaine, and your history and how that was the impetus for writing the book.
Well, thank you. There's so many things that come into play when, well, the name of my book is My Two Elaines. And the first Elaine was this young woman I met, girl, really a freshman in high school and in Latin class. And I fell in love with her. And well, as I was with her, we dated, we went steady, we got engaged, we got married, 4 children, 13 grandchildren, now 10 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
But she was my advisor and my companion and the best life partner you could ever want to hope to have. And if I would run for political office, she would be the hardest working campaigner. And if I would lose, she would never let me feel defeated. And I think if there's one legacy, if there's one point that I have treasured most about Elaine, it's that never let yourself feel defeated. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Well, the second Elaine was the very same person, but now, about 63 years of age, began to get lost going to and from places she had been going to and from for the last 10 years. She would come up with stories about what happened the night before or 2 nights before, and it never happened. She would back out of the garage and she would very unusual scrape the side of the car many times, and that never happened before. She was a great cook, and sometimes she would mess up her recipe so badly she would cry. So that was the beginning of the second Elaine. And so Elaine had Alzheimer's almost for 20 years. She died about 3 years ago now. And what has occurred is, well, nothing. When Elaine was diagnosed, some almost like 22 years ago now, there was Alzheimer's could not be cured or could not be prevented.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened today, it still cannot be cured or prevented. And so because of that, whatever I experienced and went through at that time is as relevant today as it was going back 22 years ago. And the second Elaine has taught me any number of things, and things that then I wanted to share. If there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, Jen, it's ignorance of the disease. And when I say ignorance of the disease, I mean by the medical profession, as well as parishes and congregations and employers and banks and savings and loans. People do not understand this disease. And because they don't understand it, they don't know how to act. They don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a caregiver, when the doctor told me of Elaine's diagnosis, he said there were four things. One, Numenda and Aricept, two drugs. Well, I don't know if they worked or not, but we did it. That's what he said. Then two, socializations. Oh, that's okay. We can do that. And then walking. That's the best exercise for the brain. And then the fourth thing was a glass of red wine every evening. Well, I had 4 weeks in the glass of red wine every evening and 2 weeks behind it in the walking. But that's what the doctor said. Now, I did not know at the time that caregivers have a 40% chance of dying before their loved one because of stress-related illness. I didn't know that.
It's actually higher now.
Is it higher now?
Yeah. If you're over 65, it's 70%. Just
my
girls.
gosh.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at then is that because I was ignorant of this disease, I was going down the path of having the chance to die before my wife, and I was a healthy one. And so what I learned was the importance then of joining her world. As long as I tried to keep her in my world. Elaine, it didn't happen on a Wednesday, it happened on a Thursday. Elaine, it wasn't a Smith, it was a Jones. Elaine, you asked me the same questions 20 times. How many times? Why did you put the car keys in the dishwasher? Well, I was ignorant of the disease and I didn't respond to those kinds of things very gracefully. And what I didn't understand was the importance of joining her world. So, for example, Jen, she asked me once, how are my parents? Oh, I said, they're both dead. No, they're not. Elaine, I said, yes, they are. And she said, no. I said, Elaine, your parents are both dead.
Oh.
Well, when I saw the shock on her face, when I realized that maybe she understood she never said goodbye to her parents, much less attended the funeral, I promised myself I would never put her through that again. And so the next time she asked me, how are my parents? Oh, I said, they're doing well. I said, your mom likes working at church. Your dad likes the sports. And that's just, oh, she said, that makes me feel so happy. Well, that's what I call therapeutic fibbing.
Mm-hmm.
Therapeutic fibbing. Now, there's two things I want to share with you about therapeutic fibbing. The number one is that I tried it the first year of marriage. Didn't work so good. The second thing, Jen, and not everyone believes me on this, and I have to be very truthful with everyone that not everyone believes what I'm going to be saying. But if you remember the story about Moses on Mount Sinai, getting the 10 Commandments down, well, I was there and I was helping him. Well, first of all, if you're helping Moses bring the 10 Commandments down from on top of Mount, don't call him Mo. He just hates that. So he said, Moses, I said, what can I do to help? Well, he said, you can help me get these tablets down to the bottom of the mountain. So we helped and we huffed and we got them down to the bottom. So I look at what's written on the front of these, and here in Arabic Hebrew are the words. I couldn't read that. And I was sort of confused. Well, then I walked around the back of those tablets of stone that we carried down from Mount Sinai. And here written in good American English, North American English, were written the words, therapeutic fibbing is good. Therapeutic fibbing is advisable. Therapeutic fibbing could help your loved one live their best life. And so be helping our loved one live their best life possible. And so we had talked that, 25 years ago, Alzheimer's couldn't be cured or prevented, and today it can't be cured or prevented. And so what we are beginning to understand that with that prognosis, what we can easily feel defeated, or what we can say, never let ourselves be defeated, and we can choose, instead of beating Alzheimer's, which we can't do right now, we can choose another realistic goal, and that's to help our loved one live their best possible life. And again, we do that by joining their world, by making sure that as long as I tried to keep Elaine in my world, as I pointed out, just trying to pull her back and not wanting to let her go, her life became more miserable, more anxious. My life became more miserable and more anxious. And it was just certainly something. And finally, I began to understand that you can have moments of joy, even though of this dire prognosis. You can look for the happy side of things. You can take comfort in the fact that I am doing something to help my loved one live their best life possible. So, however, what goes along with that, though, and that is for the caregiver to live their best life possible. Because unless the caregiver lives his or her best life possible, you can never help your loved one live their best life possible. And so, um, before we go to print with the book, My Two Elaines, I find a series of notes and journals that Elaine had been keeping since her diagnosis.
Oh,
And we went through those notes, and so meaningful because it helps one understand what it's like to be diagnosed with this illness and go forward. And so my daughters and I went through, and every chapter of My Two Elaines begins with some writings of Elaine to sort of give us an insight into what is going on in her mind and what she is going through. And so with that understanding of what she was going through, I want you to know that we had prayed together, we had cried together, but never did I understand the courage that it took to go forward with that diagnosis. I mean, here she knows she's losing her memory. She's concerned about what the future might be. And now she has someone criticizing her, like me, for everything she says. It didn't happen on a Thursday, on a Friday. Why did you put the cart? Why are you asking to say? All of those things she didn't know that she had said or done. And yet here she's so, but the second thing, not only understanding the courage that it takes, but I didn't understand how important I was as her lifeline. And because of that, I would say um, I I operated in a very selfish, arrogant way. And I'm gonna, so anyway, um, I didn't take care of myself. And because I didn't take care of myself, well, what does it mean you didn't take care of yourself? Well, it means that I didn't many times get enough sleep. I didn't exercise. I didn't uh, eat right. I didn't socialize. I didn't eat all the things that are so important for any healthy human being. I didn't do. And so let's assume hypothetically, Jen, that you and I are able to invite 3,000 of our most favorite people to go for a cruise in the Gulf of, one in the Caribbean, not the Gulf of America, but in the Caribbean Sea. Okay, we're on a cruise ship, and we're drinking mint juleps, and one of our friends falls overboard. We rush and we throw them a lifeline, and they grab the lifeline. And as they grab it, oh, they're saying, no, the lifeline breaks.
uh-oh.
Why does the lifeline break? Well, because it became weak. Why did it become weak? Well, because someone gnawed at it. Well, what a caregiver does is gnaws at the lifeline that they have with their loved one. And I gnawed at it and made it weak by not getting enough sleep, by not getting enough exercise, by not eating right, by not having. So, you know, the old adage about putting your oxygen mask on first when it drops down from the airplane, you know, that's very realistic, you know, with caregivers as well. And so, you know, I mentioned that if Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse. And so, what I was ignorant about is that I thought I could beat this disease. And as a male caregiver, I look back and I think, oh my gosh, if I would have had been not so arrogant and not so prideful, things would have been different. But see, I wanted to beat this disease, but you can't beat it. And so I'm so Elaine is ready, destined to go to assisted living memory care. And I was fighting it. I didn't want to partake. I didn't want to. So I go to counseling, and I tell the counselor I cannot see putting Elaine into a home. I can't see putting her into assisted living. I can't. She said, "You're not putting Elaine anyplace. You're giving her an opportunity to be who she is now." Can Marty Schreiber's 24/7 nursing home take care of her? No. I was losing my patience. I was becoming irrationally irritable. I wasn't eating right out, those things. And so then it hit me when the counselor said, you're giving her an opportunity to be who she wants to be. I realized that my personal battle with Alzheimer's was taking precedence over helping Elaine be who she is now. And that is one of the things that I began to understand, that we men have to be careful of our pride, because our pride will keep us sometimes from doing that which is intelligent, that which is common sense, that which most helps our loved one live their best life possible. One of the things that men particularly don't like to do is ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And what has to be pointed out to every male caregiver, and that is, to ask for help means you're not giving up. That's what it means. And to ask for help is a sign of courage. And again, if we can go hypothetical for a moment, if we're surrounded by an enemy and we can't fight that on our own, the most natural thing to do is to go for help. The most natural thing to do is to ask for someone to help us through it. And it takes courage to try and break through and ask for someone to give us some assistance. So if male caregivers could understand that to ask for help means you're not giving up, to ask for help is a sign of courage. It can certainly improve our loved one's life because it will give the caregiver that kind of respite, which is so important. But it also will give to the caregiver an opportunity to refresh oneself and to almost not quite begin the challenge anew, but at least be more refreshed to do that. And so, uh, one of the things also, I said if Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse. What happens is, because people are ignorant of the disease, sometimes friends of 25 or 30 years, sometimes friends of that length of time, because they are ignorant of the disease, they don't know what to say and they don't know what to do. So they stay away. Now, I call it not a chicken casserole disease, because if hypothetically I have my hip operated on and people know I'm recovering, they'll bring me chicken casserole. If hypothetically I go for a heart surgery and I come home, I'm recuperating, they'll bring me chicken casserole. But if my wife has Alzheimer's, because people are ignorant of that disease, they don't do anything. And so, in line with that, to share with you, so Elaine and I are having lunch at assisted living memory care, and we're eating together, and she's starting to cry. Well, I said, Elaine, why are you crying? Well, she looked at me and she said, I'm beginning to love you more than my husband. Well, I didn't ask her what's wrong with your turkey husband. I didn't do that. But here, Jen, is what that meant to me. It meant that it was not necessary for her to know my name in order for our hearts to touch. And that hearts can touch by holding a hand, by giving a hug, by giving a smile, by singing a song together, by just being there. And so, friends and neighbors and children and relatives and caregivers, we have to understand that just because they don't know our name, that's okay. It's the mind that is failing, but we still have this opportunity for hearts to touch. And so there's an old German saying that you get old so quickly and smart so slowly.
That's true.
And then I'll tell you, I have gotten old really so quickly and really smart so slowly. So I saw what what I was doing then is, as I began to learn more things, and I had a dear friend whose wife had early onset, and he would yell at her
Ooh.
and just, why do you don't need another blanket? You just had a blanket, or you just had a cookie, and so forth. And redirection or therapeutic fibbing was not, and they just didn't want to let go. And so what I wanted to do something where I could say, wait a minute, I've been on this Alzheimer's journey, and I think it's a very difficult journey. But I've done it, and I'm now here, and now you're going on the same path that I was on. And before you take another step, would you please sit down and visit with me just a little bit? just so you can understand the importance of joining the world of this person who now is, just so you can understand that therapeutic fibbing could be an important, just so you can understand that just so you can understand yourself that it is probably one of the toughest jobs in the world. And
Mhm.
therefore don't deprive yourself of feeling all kinds of emotions. One, and Jen, I don't know if you run across this, but um, for example, I had a friend that died. Um, he was retired and was a great life. And so one evening he had dinner and then he went to watch the TV and he died, just a massive heart attack.
Ooh.
So there was a funeral and people came by to express their condolences, their sympathy, and there was closure. An Alzheimer's caregiver never gets closure. And so not only do we not get closure as we see our loved ones sort of pass away a little bit every day, we don't really know we're grieving. We don't really know and understand that we're going through a process of separation. And this separation, this grieving is there. And so we've got to sort of understand that and because we need to deal with it. There's so many emotions that a caregiver experiences. And we have to understand that grieving for our loved one is one of them. And because of our understanding that, we can maybe get the kind of counseling or think through why I feel so bad or what is bothering me. And we know then that it's a very normal human experience feeling to be grieving over your loved one who is losing a little bit of their memory.
So I have 2 questions for you. I know a caregiver, they're early on in the journey with their wife, and they would very much like to understand the research and they wanna get they wanna get way under the hood. And in the support group that I facilitate, the other members were like, "You can know all that stuff, and it is not going to help," which is very typical male. I want to fix things. I want to understand it so I can make it better, which you understand is not reality. So, would you have advice for this person besides what what he got out of the support group, which was it's not going to change anything, which I think he was helped, but maybe somebody like you that's been there has advice that might help people like him?
Well, I would hop back. I would just hop back to understanding that there is right now no cure for the disease. And you can know everything about it like the scientists do. You can maybe even know more than the scientists do. But the fact of the matter is, there still is no cure and it still can't be prevented. And so that is as much of a fact as you and I talking to each other. And
Mhm.
he'll have to admit that. Okay, now we can't fight that battle and win it because we can't beat Alzheimer's. It's there for the time being. Hopefully, by the grace of God, they'll find something. So we can't fight this disease now. So what do we do? Well, some great philosopher said that when things go wrong, we can yell and we can scream and we can even revolt, or we can step back and understand what is. And after understanding what is, to find out and ask ourselves, how can we make it better? And so we can't beat this disease head on, but we can make things better. And then I would get to the point of, yes, you can do the research on the wherewithal of the background and the amyloids of Alzheimer's. You can do that. But more important is to do some research to find out how your loved one can live their best life possible. And I think they might run across therapeutic fitting and they might run across redirection and they might run across making sure we join the world of the person who now is. So that would be my guidance for them. But I will also say, my friends, sometimes we men are so stubborn we need to be hit over the head with a baseball bat. And maybe you deserve that. I don't know. But we would never want to, talk about, you know, hurting anyone. But by the same token, we have to be realistic.
That's true. So one of the things I struggled with early on when I became responsible for my mom's care was nobody could explain what being in their reality meant to me. They just, oh, you have to be in their reality. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm a very practical, organized person, and I would be visiting with her, and it didn't seem like I was making much of a difference. I probably was, but it didn't feel that way. And it was very difficult to not have the to-do list and the I should be doing, I'd rather be doing going through my head. I did eventually learn what that meant and how to do it, but how would you suggest somebody learn to live more in their moments and be more in their reality than trying? I wasn't trying to pull mom into mine. I don't know what I was trying to do.
Yeah. Well, we almost have to take on a different, we need a mental adjustment. When you go from a loving daughter or son or a loving husband or wife into being a caregiver, you're changing. You're no longer a loving son or daughter or a loving husband or wife. You are morphing into a caregiver. And a caregiver has a different set of responsibilities and things of knowledge than what a loving spouse or loving spouse or loving son or daughter might be. So I think it's important for people to understand that their role is changing, and we need a mental readjustment about about what is important. You know, the doctor said walking, we should go for a walk. Best exercise for the brain. Well, my walk was 30 minutes. Come on, Elaine, let's go. You know, well, she said, look at that beautiful flower. No, come on, Elaine, look at the, no, we got to get it through, you know, joining her world. So the prognosis was horrible. Okay. Oh, you feel down. Oh my God. But the point is that Elaine was helping me have moments of joy by asking me to stop for a moment and look at that beautiful flower. And so I needed an attitude readjustment. And I think that that's what what a caregiver, what a morphing husband or wife or daughter or son feels as they change in their morphine, and because they are changing what roles they are playing, it requires a recalibration of what the therapeutic fibbing, for instance. You know, no, Elaine, your parents are both dead. Well, how foolish was that on my part to do that? And so, I think to understand that these roles are there, and it requires a mental an attitude readjustment. It's required.
Sometimes with therapeutic fibbing, it was a little difficult for me because we don't lie to our parents. That's just a really bad idea. Shouldn't lie at all. But lying to your mom is really not great. I got an upgrade in our relationship. She thought I was her best friend. She would tell everybody, I've known her forever, which would make everybody laugh because, yeah, you pretty much have known me my entire life. One time I teased her a little bit with, I think you've known me longer than anybody else, but that didn't click into any past relationship. But she asked me about her parents once, and she said, had I seen them lately? And I was like, oh, no. But I had learned because my maternal grandmother had vascular dementia. She got very upset one day, thinking that my grandfather had left her for another woman, and my aunt, not understanding what you and I have understand now, and she did learn it. She said, "No, Mom, he didn't leave you for another woman. He died," which was not any better. So I learned, thankfully, sometimes we don't generally learn from other people's mistakes. I learned from that one. So I knew not to say, oh, they're gone or whatever. I just said, no, actually, I haven't seen them in a long time. And then I kind of went back into history and said, I bet you they're just traveling the country and enjoying grandpa's retirement, because that's what they did right after I graduated from high school. They sold their home and traveled the country in their 35-foot fifth wheel trailer. So that's been a few years. So thankfully I knew better. And then she would always ask about, quote, her husband. And she would always ask if he knew where she was or what she was doing. And it was always in a snarky tone of voice, because they had a challenging relationship. He did not learn the lessons that you're sharing today. He was not the best caregiver, unfortunately, and it definitely did not help his health issues. But that one was hard because I had to pretend to be her friend and talk about my dad in this other way. I was like, oh, yikes, that was hard. But
Yeah.
once I learned, because she would ask me, does my husband know where we're going? I'd say, yes, mom, dad knows where we're going. And one day it finally hit me like a bolt of lightning when she'd asked me that question like 6 times in less than 10 minutes. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I went to open the car door and the lightning bolt hit me in the head. And I was like, I have not been answering the question she's asking. I get in the car, she asks it again. I'm like, oh, yeah, he knows we're going to the nail salon. He gave me some extra money for you. It's all good. She didn't ask me that question again that day. And I was like, dang it. Should have learned this one earlier.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you, that's what you do is so important, to help people live their best lives possible. And experience. It's 9:30 in the morning. Elaine wants a glass of wine. Elaine, you can't have a glass. That's not the answer. Elaine, you want red wine or white wine? Do you want to drink it with your sisters or maybe with your friends? Do you want to? Should we have it in a taller glass? Well, let's have a cup of coffee while we think about having it and redirection and yeah. So when you think back, I bet with your mom, you got to take so much self satisfaction of knowing that you helped her live her best life possible by giving her her world, a
Mm-hmm.
world of where her husband was or whatever else might be happening. So good, and it doesn't it. So that's what takes me on the trail. That's what has, and I bet with you too, because to see the pain in someone's face when it's an answer that just is not related, or to see the pain when these questions still keep on coming in and so to be able to have people hopefully understand how important this role of a caregiver is for quality of life, to help people understand it, that's worth something. That's worth something.
That was my goal with her, was just to give her the best quality of life possible without doing anything that would extend dying from Alzheimer's. Because, like you, Elaine, my mom had Alzheimer's for at least 20 years. When you look backwards, you can say, she started showing signs in 1995. She died at the very start of the pandemic in 2020. So that's 25 years. It's a long time. But, we didn't know in 95, 96. We just thought she was losing her mind, like
Mhm.
literally.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I was thinking it would be a hardening of the arteries, or there would be some other kind of description as to why the person is not acting in a usual manner. And but that's why I wrote the book, My Two Elaines, because um, having traveled that journey and having had that experience and and if you remember your pain, you remember the worry and the concerns and so forth, and to think that it's possible to help people better understand the disease and take away some of that pain, some of that angst, to have these moments of joy and be able to even have fun and laugh at different times.
We did do that. One of our, well, I tried all of the suggestions, music therapy and, simplifying, art. She was very artistic and creative, to simplify hobbies that she enjoyed in her younger years. And we failed those with flying colors. And it finally, I don't know, out of desperation or just like stumbled on the knowledge, we ended up going to the park or the pool or the library, any place where she could go watch kids. And she enjoyed that, and we were outside getting sunshine, fresh air, out of the same place. I make a joke these days that my caregiving is for a 10-and-a-half-year-old golden retriever who is more social than myself. Sometimes I go upstairs from my office and she's literally laying on the floor, staring at the front door like, I can't take these walls anymore. I mean, it's just very, very bored. So I'm acutely aware of what she needs. So it's kind of interesting because she was one of multiple dogs. In the last 2 years, she's been an only. And so I'm very I take great pains to make sure that she gets what she needs for her physical and her mental health. And it's like, dang, man, this is almost as much work is taking care of my mother. But I can leave the dog home for a little while, but she doesn't like that at all. She doesn't care where we go as long as she gets to go with me. But yeah, we would go watch kids. We went to the dog park once. I took all three of my golden retrievers and my mother. Talk about a handful. But she was great. She actually had the youngest one on a leash, and he seemed to know that he needed to be calm with her. And he wasn't he was a little two personality dog. Wild as all get out. If you let him out of the yard without a leash, he was gone, running, racing all over the place until he was so exhausted he would literally drag himself home. But so loving. But he seemed to know that this gal on the other end of my leash needs me to be calm. And my mom loved dogs. She had dogs all of her life. Her repetitive story was about dogs. So taking her to the dog park was a risk in that case. But I learned as soon as she started in on her repetitive story, she'd take a breath. She'd say, it's always started with, I've had dogs all my life. And that's where I interjected. And I was like, you have? What were all their names? Well, one day she told me that the first dog's name was Misty, and they liked that name so much that all of the other dogs were named Misty, which made me laugh because the last dog was named Misty, and the male dogs were not named Misty. So, but I never argued with her. I was just like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, that's a pretty name. But that's what we did. And that's, it gave her joy. And it was the least stressful thing for me to do with her. So, but that kind of leads me to another question is, how did you deal with those common frustrations, like the repetitive story or the repetitive question? Those moments where you're like, I think it would be less painful if I banged my head on the wall kind of moments.
Well, I had sort of a mentor. The one day I called up the mentor and I said, do you ever just feel like screaming? He said, not only do I just feel like screaming, I scream. And so what I learned is redirection. So for example, maybe I would get a big whiteboard, a chalkboard, but with the we are leaving at 10 a.m. If we're going someplace, so that would be so I could point to that and with the question, then that at least would be there. Elaine, which I want to go home. I want to go home. Well, what is home to Elaine? So Elaine, what were some of the things about home that you like? So it could be the home that she was in when she was 4 years old, or maybe our first home after we got married, or maybe I don't know which home it is, but through redirection and just to try and find ways to get something to be focused. One of the things that we did, she was a great cook. And so she would get on some of these tangents of asking these questions. We might chop celery. We chopped a lot of celery. And then also folding of wash, blankets and bed sheets. We'd do that and we'd still need more time to occupy. So I would take them in the other room, shake them out, bring them back in, and we'd fold them again. Or as we played games and the games had no rules, it was just that. So it's hard, it's hard to deal with all of those unusual things that come up and to just try and figure out the best kind of answer. And sometimes you can call what the Alzheimer's Association has, the 800 hotline 24 hours a day. They can be helpful. As you said, you've got a support group going, and maybe some of your people have other ideas on how best to handle it. But you just sort of try everything. And I guess the most important is to realize they're not trying to get under your skin for the fun of it. That they just don't know any better.
That is true. I have another past guest who she was caring for her husband, who was a very sweet, loving, very mellow person. And he was asking the same question over and over and over. And she made the cardinal sin of just, and then answering. And when she looked at him, she said it looked like she had slapped him. And she vowed right then and there to never do anything that would put that expression on his face. So she came up with the mantra, if he could remember, he would not ask again. And he did not ask to have Alzheimer's. And that that helped her get through the repetitive stuff that was one of the hardest things for me. It was just like, are you trying to damage my brain? Lady, you're killing me. Like I don't rewatch movies or reread books or any of that stuff. Some movies I might watch a little, some from my teen, the 80s, those John Hughes movies maybe, but for the most part I like Leftovers. That's about it. So dealing with all that repetitiveness just was like, "Ah, you're killing me. Knock it off." Like, ask me the same question in a different way. I don't care, but just ask me
Yeah,
differently.
yeah.
But
Well, see,
fortunately, I did learn early to, I learned redirection pretty early. But again, we had my mom and my grandmother overlapped with their dementia
oh my.
diagnoses.
Oh.
Um, let me think, for about easily 5, maybe 10 years. It's hard. I mean, it kind of depends on. My mom was really good about not being diagnosed until she was literally midway through the disease. Like, she was diagnosed in October of 2011. And by that point, it was like, tell me something I didn't know. I did not need a doctor to tell me she had some form of dementia. So it's hard. It's like, I just realized the other day that I've told people I just barely escaped being the sandwich caregiver because my daughter moved out, my dad died, and then I became responsible for my mom. I forgot all about the years we had our family business together, and I was hovering, supervising mom because she would take orders from clients. We had a 1 hour photo lab and a portrait studio. We did a lot of photo restorations, and she'd take these photo restoration jobs. There'd be no directions. I'd be like, what the heck am I doing, lady? And then she'd look at it and go, I don't know, but somebody else took that order, and be like, oh, yeah, no, that's your handwriting. So and this, because we didn't want to tell people what was going on. We didn't really know what was going on. We kind of did, but weren't really admitting it even to ourselves. If I heard her, jabber John with a client, I'd go and insert myself into the conversation. My daughter was there after school the whole time, like, oh, yeah, I was a sandwich caregiver. And it's important to acknowledge those roles and those identifications. That way hey, I'm part of this group, and this group has these kind of particular issues, whereas, older caregivers may not be sandwiched, although you might usually feel that way anyway. So it's been an interesting journey all these years.
Yeah. Well, and you've learned so much, some of it more hard and difficult than other things, but now you have a chance to share that with other people and help them. And again, it's like taking this journey and having been there and other people are taking the same journey and you can tell them, hey, be careful, walk around the stump rather than over the stump, or walk over the stump than that one rather than around, all kinds of things like that. And then they help caregivers understand it's normal to feel miserable. You're guilty or guilt, not or, but guilty and grieving and anxiety and worry and frustration and I'm not doing. And then what you probably had the same experience. I would get to the point where, oh God, I think I got this whole thing under control. And then you wake up the next morning, it's a whole new world, Oh my God, now what am I doing wrong? And then so you devote more time to it. And I don't know how I did it. Do you know how you did it?
No, I started a podcast and talked to people like you. So that helped me learn how to deal with my mom. And if you go back to earlier episodes, so prior to the pandemic, you can probably figure out what I was dealing with by the topics. But since my mom passed away, so I did the show longer without her than I did with, I'm still learning really good caregiving practices. I've talked to enough people where it's like, I feel like an expert, but there's days when it's like, oh, yeah, that's a good. I learned something new, and it's like this is good because if I'm learning things, then I feel like the listener should be learning things, and if it doesn't apply this week, maybe it'll apply next month, or maybe you've been through that and you're like, oh, great, I feel so much better to know that Marty felt this way and Jen felt this way. So
Yes. So I now I'm in the eighth printing of my book, My Two Elaines. And in the course of different editions, one thing I did not do in the first editions was to have my children, who were then young adults, reflect on what their experiences were. And people would ask me, well, how did your children react? Well, stupid me, I was just worried about myself and Elaine, and I wasn't sitting and visiting with my children because they're grieving also. And so in the book also is discussions of grief. They are in essence discussing their experiences, but then also what I did, Jen, and this is the this is the last edition here. And
I have it
so,
too, but it doesn't show very well with the green screen.
yeah. And so, but anyway, I have a conversation between myself and a neuropsychologist. And I wanted to do that because what what you and I are sharing are my own personal experiences. I'm not a medical doctor, but what I did want to do is to make sure that there was and could be an understanding by the person reading the book that it's science is on top of this relative to how we should be working with our loved one to help them on their journey. And so there's a question and answer session in there with myself and neuropsychologist, and she's done a number of writings on brain health and so forth. And so it's, we try. By the way, I hate golf. No, it's really horrible after this wonderful weekend of golf and TV and so forth. But, but to be able to visit with you and to be able to talk to caregivers and maybe help them and so forth, that's worth it. That's like a hole in one, maybe 5 holes in one at one time. If we can really help make a difference in people's lives as to how they can have a journey that helping their loved one live their best life possible. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole goal. And now you've given me reasons to reread the book because there's information in here that wasn't in the first version. So I will do that. So I appreciate you sharing your story and your wisdom, hard-earned wisdom, as most of us have gotten it. And I live on a golf course, and I have zero use for the golfing. I prefer it as a free-range place for the dog to run.
Much to the chagrin.
Well, we wait till the golfers are done because she will steal their balls.
Oh my
And she'll chase the snack, the snack cart, because the dog's name is Luna. Luna is very food obsessed. So her priorities in life are food, a human with food, and then a human who will pet her. And if you're not one of those 3 things, she don't got no use for you. But you were talking about walking and stopping. Dogs experience the world through their noses. So when you're walking them and they stop and they sniff, and you're like, I do not take walks with the dog for my exercise because it's pointless. But I get her out, we walk, she sniffs, I stand around, I don't bring my AirPods. I have my phone, but I don't listen to anything, and I just enjoy the trees, the bushes, whatever. Sometimes I just watch the dog sniff, the same basic bush that she sniffed 3 feet ago. So you do have to learn how to live in the moment. It is good for you.
Yep, it is. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I hope everybody reads my Two Elaines. I remember reading it back in 2018. And like I said, I'm going to reread it because now there's new information 7 years later. So good
and
for
we
you.
do have thank you. We do have a website. It's mytwoelaines.com. All one word, mytwoelaines.com. And so they can order a book through us too. And whatever else might be helpful to them, that would make me feel good.
Awesome. Well, that will be in the show notes. And once again, I thank you and enjoy the beautiful weather and avoid the golfers.
All right. God love you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you.